welcome. My name is Brian Caplen, editor of The Banker. I'm here with Silvia Pavoni, the economics editor. We're discussing the top 1,000 rankings. And Silvia, you've been looking at North and South America. Tell us a little bit about how the US banks did to kick us off.
So despite the big fines that hit and are still hitting many of the big North American US banks, most of the tier one capitals have been improving. So this is obviously positive.
Yeah. And obviously we've seen with the US banks, I mean, they recovered from the crisis much faster than the European banks. So they've actually got, like a 20% share of total world profits now, which is quite an achievement.
And out of all the US banks, actually, it's interesting to point out that American Express is the one with the highest return on capital. So it's an interesting, perhaps, thing to look into.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Now, let's turn to South America. And I think you've discovered some rather interesting thing about the Mexican results. So tell us about that.
Well, firstly, obviously, the Brazilian banks are still the undisputed giants. We have the 5 biggest banks still firmly there at the top. But in Mexico, the 2 locally owned banks are doing really well. So we have Banorte, which has consolidated the acquisition of IXE, which is the 6th actually highest ranking in the Latin American list. But also Banco Inbursa is doing really well. According to the data that we have, it shows the highest return on assets at 6.4%.
Right, okay, that's truly
which is pretty
phenomenal,
impressive. Yes.
Okay, all right. Now, some other countries that have stood out, in terms of the results on paper have been places like Venezuela, haven't they? Where you've seen huge returns on capital. What's actually going on there? Because we know that the economy is in a bit of turmoil. Of
course, I mean Venezuela and over the years increasingly so Argentina are 2 countries which are difficult to call and analyze. So the Venezuelan banks have displayed really good profitability ratios, but we also need to take a couple of things into consideration. One is obviously the exchange rate, which has been changing, but also the very high inflation. Some data points to a 57% inflation mark, which may not even be correct and could be even higher.
And the point about this is that it gives you very high net interest margins, doesn't it? So that kind of inflates your profits.
Absolutely. It is a market that's where it is obviously very difficult to operate. A lot of the bank don't run in a sort of open market at all. So. But nonetheless, they have displayed interesting figures, and we ought to look into them.
Okay. And just quickly on Brazil, are we going to see a World Cup effect?
How interesting. Well, let's hope so for the Brazilians. They have had a couple of tough couple of years, so we wish them well.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.